The hollow bells. I shouldn't have taken the back road. The main highway had been washed out by the early rains, and I, ever the genius with my shortcuts, figured the long-forgotten village road might shave an hour off my trip. But that was before the storm turned the mountains into dark silhouettes and the trees into howling skeletons. Before the thunder started to talk back, the map called the place Drellam's Hollow. It wasn't on my GPS. There were no street lights, just a gravel path winding like a snake through a dense wall of pine and rot. The first sign of life was a cracked wooden post that read, "Welcome." But the paint had long since run off in the rain. What was left looked like a warning. I don't know what made me stop. Maybe it was the sound, like a church bell, but warped, off tune. It rang once, twice, then silence, except for the storm slamming down around me. When I looked up, the trees had parted just enough to reveal a scattering of old buildings, barely visible in the flickering light of lightning. Slate roofs, warped shutters, doors half-hinged, and mouths agape like broken teeth. I should have turned around, but something was wrong with the road behind me. I swear, it had changed. Where there had been 2 tire tracks, there was now just mud. Deep, sucking mud, and shapes, long, dragging marks, like something had crawled its way across the road and into the woods. My headlights dimmed, then flickered, then died. The rain made it impossible to see much, so I grabbed my flashlight from the glove box and stepped out. Cold hit me like a slap, the kind that rattles your bones. Wind clawed at my jacket. The flashlight barely cut through the sheets of rain, but I caught glimpses, faded signs above doorways, shutters that twitched as if from breath, not breeze. I moved toward the building with the bell. It sat at the edge of what may have once been a village square. A steeple rose above it, leaning slightly, like it was listening. The bell rang again, low, hollow, and wrong. No clapper could have made that sound. It was too wet, too close, like it rang from within the walls. As I approached, I passed a window. Something moved behind it. Not a person. Something taller, longer. I froze. Lightning struck behind the steeple, throwing its shadow across the square. In that moment, the bell rang again, and my ears rang with it. But it wasn't just a sound, it was a feeling. You are not alone. My flashlight began to flicker. The window ahead went dark. Then came a whisper, barely audible above the thunder. Back again? The door to the chapel creaked open on its own, and from inside, something breathed. I don't know why I stepped inside. The rational part of me, the part screaming, turned back, leave. Run was drowned beneath something heavier. Not curiosity, not fear, recognition. Like I'd stood in that threshold before. The chapel's door groaned wider as I approached, moving in slow defiance of the wind. My flashlight trembled in my grip, casting pale, shivering light across the warped pews inside. The place stank of mold and wet stone. The air was thick, like breathing through a cloth, soaked in vinegar and blood. The bell above let out a faint thump, like a heartbeat. There were no crosses, no altar, no signs of worship. Just rows of seats facing a pulpit that had collapsed into a pile of splinters. Strange symbols, crudely carved into the walls, seemed to shift when I didn't look directly at them. I swept the beam of light across them, trying to make sense of anything. But the harder I stared, the more my temples ached, like something was pushing against the inside of my skull. I turned. Something was at the door. Not in front of it, part of it. A pale, gaunt face had pressed itself into the grain of the wood, stretched taut like a scream frozen in bark. Eyes bulged outward, veins like roots trailing up the frame. The mouth was open wide, as if mid-shout, but no sound came. I stumbled backward, heart slamming into my ribs. I blinked. The door was closed again. The face was gone, but the bell, it rang once more. And this time, the sound vibrated through my bones, through the floor, through the pews, and through the others. I hadn't noticed them before. They were sitting quietly, in the far back, figures cloaked, in gray, heads bowed, unmoving. My flashlight caught only outlines, hints of eyes beneath long, tangled hair. No one moved. No one breathed. I stepped back toward the door, but my boot caught on something, a loose board. It groaned beneath my weight and gave way. I crashed through it, landing in something wet and soft, softer than earth. My flashlight skittered across the stone. In the faint light, I saw what I'd landed on. Fabric, dozens of robes, and beneath them, bones. Some fresh, some cracked and yellowed with age, all arranged in a circle. I scrambled up, but the room had changed. The pews were gone. The figures were gone. The door, gone. Only the bell remained, ringing again, louder now, constant. And underneath it, a voice, dry and whispering from beneath the floorboards. You came back to remember. You never left. Lightning split the sky outside, but it lit nothing here. The chapel was no longer part of the village. It was inside me now. I ran. I ran again. This time, not away from the chapel, but toward it. Because I understood now, it would never be behind me. No matter where I turned, it moved with me. Like memory, like guilt. And that's what this place was, wasn't it? Not a village, not a storm, a burial ground of memory. And I was its last living corpse. The rain hissed like static across my skin. My clothes clung to me, heavy as morning. The trees on either side of the path twisted inward, branches snapping and creaking as they bent to watch. I didn't look at them, not after one leaned low enough to whisper, "We remember the boy who watched her drown." I didn't stop. I couldn't. But the words burrowed deep, pulling pieces of me loose. Bits I thought had eroded long ago. The pond, the broken ice, my sister's hand reaching from the dark, and me, frozen, watching, not saving. The chapel door stood open now, not like a welcome, but a mouth. Inside was a dull glow, flickering like a dying candle. The bell above rang in reverse still, peeling time away in backward strokes. Inside, everything was wrong again. The pews were back, but upside down. The bones had been stacked not in a circle, but in a throne. And seated atop it was a figure wrapped in black lace and damp hair, her face turned away. I should have run, but I walked to her, drawn like a moth to something that wasn't aflame. The figure slowly turned her head. It was her, but not as I remembered her. My sister's face was waterlogged, eyes bloated and pale. Her mouth twitched, not in speech but in mimicry, lips forming words she no longer understood. "You left me," she said, voice like dripping wood. "So I built you a home." She stood, impossibly tall now, her bones stretching beneath her soaked skin, robe unraveling into shadows that writhed. Behind her, the bell split open like a wound, and from it, voices poured, not words, but screams, my screams, over and over. I dropped to my knees. I was scared. I choked. I was a child. Her face twitched, and for one moment, I saw the little girl who used to braid dandelions and laugh in the sun. But she was gone. She leaned close. Her breath smelled of earth and rot and riverweed. You don't get to forget. The shadows rushed me. They poured into my mouth, into my ears, into my memory. The chapel vanished. The trees went still. The bell fell silent. I awoke by the roadside at dawn, mud-caked and shivering. My car was there, headlights still dead. No village behind me, no chapel. Just an empty road and the sound of soft wind through trees. But sometimes, when it rains, I hear a bell, and it's always ringing. Back